myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and with Holly Blades on a Monday. Holly and I talk about different topics and take a bit of advice and direction from the chat as well. But we already handpicked a few topics to kickstart with. How are you doing, Holly? Are you okay?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Had a busy weekend and just nice to be back on doing a live show because obviously we've had quite a few pre-records out over the last few weeks, just things starting to pick up again, and obviously with COVID lifting, I mean, it's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, hopefully by the 19th of July we could be, almost back to normal, full stop.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Good stuff. Okay, well, Holly beat me to it tonight. She sent over quite a few decent topics. And where do you want to start tonight, Holly?
I think we'll start with the Rafa Benitez story. Obviously, that's took quite a few different twists and turns in various directions. It seemed like it was totally off last week when we did the show, and now it seems it's back on. And obviously, there's been a lot of threats that he's been getting from Everton or Liverpool fans. I know there's rumours of which set of fans it is, and he got that post outside his house, which I'm assuming most people have seen, which is obviously not a good start whatsoever. And I think that Rafa really needs to consider whether he wants to make this move or not, because the closer he gets to moving, obviously the more things are picking up, and I think he really needs to consider whether this is something that he wants to do, because it doesn't seem to be working out well so far, and he hasn't even been appointed yet.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the picture on the social media doing the rounds today, which was basically, we know where you live. I mean, why on earth somebody would even bother putting a banner like that up? I really just don't know why on earth anybody would do that. But I mean, it's clearly that the passions are running high. I mean, Liverpool fans, I wouldn't imagine would have done that. Everton fans clearly don't want him there because of his connection with Liverpool. But I've got to be honest, it surprised me because since he's come back from China, obviously spent a bit of time with his family. We've had the whole pandemic. But I always felt that he was holding on for this takeover to go through. But then I guess the question is, how long can we expect him to hold on? How long can we expect, Rafa Benitez to hold on for potentially a job that might never ever come up? Imagine if the takeover goes through and then they go for somebody else, or, the takeover doesn't go through and, we're stuck with Steve Bruce and he's wasted all that time and missed out on a hatful of jobs. I guess I can understand it, but I just find Everton a strange choice. Do you?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's had a strong relationship with Liverpool as a football club and the fans for a long, long time now. And to go to Everton seems very out of character for Rafa Benitez. I can understand why he doesn't want to hold on for the Newcastle job, though, because this has been going on for a long time. And we don't actually know yet how much longer it's got to go on. And you can't expect the guy to stay without a job forever because, age isn't really on his side now. We will be getting on. He won't have forever and ever left in management. And he loves football. He wants to be in a job. He doesn't want to just sit about kind of not doing much. So you definitely expect him to be looking for some job, because the thing is, even if the takeover does happen within the next few weeks, it's not actually guaranteed that he is going to get that job. Yes, you'd imagine that he is the favourite, but it's not like he's actually got it set in stone. You will get the job. So it's a lot of uncertainty that he's got to just kind of hope and pray things will happen when they might not. So I think, yeah, you could definitely see him taking another job. But Everton, for me, if I was him, I'd be definitely thinking about it, because I just don't think it's the right choice from whatsoever. It's a very bizarre appointment for me. But, I think what annoyed me about the Everton thing was, yes, it was totally out of order. It was shocking. Nobody should do that, especially if someone's, own home and things where his family lives. Like, that is just totally wrong. No matter what you think of the person, you don't go to those lengths to send them hate. But if you take it back to Newcastle, when Steve Bruce was appointed, and he was getting quite a bit of stick before he even joined us, obviously with his Sunderland connections and various other things, we got a lot of criticism for not giving him a chance before he got through the door. We were absolutely hounded in the media and just slated, but we never ever sent him threats or anything like to that extent going to his house in the early stages, and yet nothing really seems to be like being said about Everton fans. They're not getting generalised like we do. So yet again, I just think that shows the agenda of the anti-Newcastle media as per usual. I think, do you feel the same about that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, we're always going to be judged by the media. I don't think it's a paranoia amongst our supporters. I think that we probably get more, criticism and probably more journalists writing about our supporters than any other clubs, it has to be said. So I would agree with you 100%. I mean, somebody's put in the chat there that it was the wrong house that the banner was laid out of. I find it hard to believe that they've put it outside the wrong house. But if they have, then it still doesn't make it any less of a bad thing to put outside someone's house. I'm just really surprised he's chosen to go to Everton. But he's desperate to get back into football. It's clear that's what he wants to do. He wants to get back into the whole, into the Premier League, the day-to-day running of a football club. And from his point of view, that's it. It's simply about being involved in work. And as he's made it quite clear, being close to his family as well is very important. I mean, he spent over a year away from his family in China, and then the pandemic broke. So, from his perspective, he just wants to be closer to home. Can you understand that, Ollie? I guess I can, but I just find the Everton job a very, very strange one to want to take.
Yeah, of course, I can understand it. I mean, Everton makes a lot of sense in some aspects because he does live in the Liverpool area. His family live there, and it'll be a convenient job for him. It's just not a job that I think I would have imagined him taking, because in my mind, Rafa's always a man that's very loyal. He's not like, in my mind, he's not in it for kind of money or things like that. I know that has been thrown at him in the past, but that's not how he comes across to me. I think he does genuinely care a lot about his clubs, and he has loyalties to them. And I think Rafa's a man that's got a lot of principles and values, and this Everton job taken that just seems to go against those values. So it's not something that I'll ever understand, but I hope he does well and everything goes well from there, and hopefully he doesn't get this type of abuse if he does get appointed, because it must be very scary for Rafa and his family.
No, definitely. Tom says he's surprised that Spurs haven't come in for Benitez. A rumour that I heard going around this morning was that Martinez is the main man labelled for the Spurs job, and potentially that could mean Graham Jones going with him, because of course they are close friends. And if Jones gets the opportunity of going in and doing a number two job with Martinez, I would imagine he would probably want to snap the hands off. What do you think about that?
I'd like to think that Graham Jones is happy at Newcastle and that he'd want to stay here, because obviously it's his boyhood club. He was very keen to come here in the first place, and he hasn't been here too long. Obviously, he came midway through the season and he made an instant impact. So I think he has got the potential to do even more good things with our club next season. And the fact that he's going to be here in the summer makes me feel a lot confident than if it was like the season before when we just had Steve Bruce and his normal coaches, because I think Graham Jones brings a lot more security kind of to our club, and I feel a lot more confident in terms of staying up with him at the helm. So I'd like to think that he wants to pursue his career at Newcastle, and I think the fact that he is a Geordie and he's from Gateshead will go in our favour. But it wouldn't surprise us if he took the Spurs job if it was offered, because obviously that's a great job, and also our club's probably not the most attractive club to be working at, especially at the moment. But I think in my heart of hearts, I think he will stay here. Do you think he will?
Yeah, I hope he does. I mean, it's clear that he's made a big impression under Steve Bruce's, management and working alongside Agnew, etc. He's come in and, he's changed things around. He's, they worked together well. If they hadn't worked together well, Newcastle's season wouldn't have ended as it did. And I think Graham Jones takes a big amount of credit for that. But I think when you look at the fact that he was then called up for the England squad, I think tells you all you need to know, that, from his perspective, he's a man who is much sought after. His technical ability as a coach is much sought after. So, yeah, I mean, it's his boyhood club. I think a lot of it will come down to what his ambitions are. What is a coach's ambitions? It's to be able to, ply your trade, I guess, at the highest level. Well, you can't get much higher than international football. But to look at it from a club's point of view, is he an Alan Shearer within himself? Is he one of those who wants to just do it for his boyhood club, or is he somebody who fancies a challenge at the other end of the Premier League with Tottenham maybe? So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting, as I say. It's just a rumour. Keith Rowell says, "Evening, Steve, Holly, and all the visceral response from some of the Everton fans towards Benitez has surprised me. I can't remember Spurs fans reacting like this when George Graham was appointed." I mean, it's difficult. I can remember players going to clubs, Holly. I can remember players who've gone and not been welcome. But managers, is there anybody who sticks out from your perspective?
Not really. I think with Rafa Benitez, obviously he's had similar at Chelsea, but I don't think to those extreme lengths that Everton fans have went to.
Yeah, Chelsea's a good shout. I mean, I've talked about it before on the show, but Benitez to Chelsea wasn't greeted with open arms, was it? To be fair, and as you mentioned earlier, Bruce going to Newcastle wasn't greeted with open arms, but there wasn't the protests that we've seen so far with Everton fans. I guess as well, it's the way that Everton's been run at the moment by the owner. Then I mentioned the other week, I think it's something like 5 managers in 5 years if you add it all up. And when you start doing that with managers, it tends to have a knock-on effect with the rest of the club. There's the uncertainty. You end up accumulating players from different managers, and it becomes a bit of a mess. And the club eventually starts to spiral. And if you think about all the hard work and effort that was put in at Everton had done quite well in recent years, but then they seem to have lost their way over the last 12 months, and it's a strange situation for them. It's a strange situation to find themselves in. I mean, I'd still rather be in their position than Newcastle's each season, but yeah, no, it is interesting. Good opening topic anyway. Anyone wants to comment on that, please drop us a message in the chat. Stu says, "I read on Twitter, so take it with a huge pinch of salt. It was a Liverpool fan who left the vile message for Rafa. I suppose it's not beyond the realms of possibility." Yeah, Holly mentioned that earlier, and potentially it is, but whoever's left it, it's not a nice thing to leave. Keith says, "On paper, Everton job is appealing job. Big new stadium, moving a couple of years, owner with money to spend, top 6 aspirations, and a good move for any manager if all goes well." Another good point, well made there. Graham Jones is a quality coach. No surprise if Martinez takes him to Spurs this Dunnell. That's if Martinez goes there. ADB says, "Everton fans never even appreciated Ancelotti. Only one of the best managers ever." Which again is true. I know there seems to be a lot of people quite critical of the Everton fans, but if it was a Liverpool fan who left it, who knows? Spurs will give him access to European football, says Jeff. And Stu says, "I'm not convinced it's a nice working environment for Jones at Newcastle, especially the daggers he got when he first arrived. Maybe Bruce is mellowed, but it's not a great setup." Colin says, "I wouldn't mind seeing Martinez linking up with Graham Jones at the Toon again." And yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of reports out there with other names being mentioned. If Rafa doesn't come to Newcastle again, it's just there's a lack of things. We were saying this before we came on air. When we're looking for topics to discuss on tonight's show, Holly, it is quite difficult in the close season, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels almost impossible sometimes. And I think this season's worse than any other because we are used to bad communication from the club and kind of a slow start in the transfer window. But this year, they're literally saying like nothing. We don't actually have a clue about anything really, even like basic things like shirts, obviously season tickets, players in and out, everything. We don't know what's happening. I mean, obviously we've seen that like the 9 bar and stuff at the ground's closed down. None of that's being mentioned. Is it going to reopen? Just nobody knows what's happening with the club. And that's not an uncommon thing. I think we are used to this, but it really does feel for me like Mike Ashley or whoever is in control of those kind of things is just kind of shut up shop and he's like moved on and just left the club behind. It really does feel like that. And that worries me, because I think if this takeover does fall through or it drags on for a very long time, are we going to be just left in disrepair and no one's going to actually take care of the day-to-day runnings of the club? Because that's what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, 2-1 to Spain, as quite a few people have reported in the chat, against Croatia. Billy says, "Terry Neal left Spurs as a manager to take the Arsenal job and took Pat Jennings with him. Definitely not the furore Everton fans are kicking off with. but it's the times we live in, I guess. Yeah, and social media definitely tends to ramp up the angle and the problems as well. But any more comments and rather drop them in the messages below, and we will come back to that. Okay, Ollie, you wanted to talk about the strips leaked. Now, it's something we've covered on the Fab Four over the last few weeks, and some pictures have been flying around the internet, etc. But are we any closer to knowing what the strip's going to be next year?
Probably not. I think it's just a lot of guesswork from people on Twitter and various images that get in the online kind of domain every year. I don't think anyone has any clue, like I just said, about what is actually happening at the club at the minute. It's just absolutely crazy. I mean, I'd hate to be a journalist at the minute covering Newcastle, because could you imagine trying to get information from the club? Like, it's just really, really impossible. It feels like we're not even preparing for the new season. Like, at this rate, we'll probably end up playing in last season strips and just with the same squad. It's just, honestly, it's madness.
It is crazy, really, but I mean, it's like, lack of communication. I think that's the problem. And Dunnell says the communications from the club is absolutely rubbish. And I mean, it's because, there is a skeleton staff there at the best of times, but now it's the close season, then, nobody's going to be at work. And a lot of people not knowing whether they're going to be coming back into work, I guess, if a takeover happens to go through, during this period of the next 6 weeks. So it is an awkward time for everybody, but a very awkward time for Newcastle United. I mean, got to be honest, some of the strips I've seen circulated don't look genuine, don't look great, and certainly not, again, something I would buy. But I haven't bought one for many, many years now, simply because we brought a pay deal lender in, and I thought the quality of the strips were actually getting worse. And, I've been used to decent strips over the period of time, probably since the Keegan days in the 90s. I've always liked the strips. The strips have been well worth having, but I just gradually think that the commercial side of it is getting worse now. Not just necessarily Newcastle, but just across the board. And, the amount of strips that are coming out, you have a first team strip, you have the first, you have your home strip, you have your away strip. Now you get a second strip and a third strip and a fourth strip and it's ludicrous. Goalkeeper strips come out, and they're all different colours, all different shapes, sizes, different things on them. I just think it's just become ridiculous now, And once upon a time, you just had your black and white shirt, and that was it. But I think gradually over the last few years, it's just got out of control. Are you somebody who buys a replica shirt on a regular basis? Do you go out and get one when the first one comes out, the home top at least, or are you do you see which one you like? How do you deal with it?
I don't get them regularly. When I was younger, I used to get like pretty much them all. Now I don't. I normally get them halfway through the season when they're selling them off, to be honest, because I think £65, which is the going rate at the start of the season for a shirt, is far too much. I think £30 to £40 is more than enough, to be honest. I think now the prices have just got ridiculous. But I normally get the home strip, sometimes another one if I think it looks all right. But I saw some of the leaks, the Castor leaks, and I saw the black one, which I think was the third strip, and I really like that one. So if that does end up being real, I'll probably get that.
Interesting. I mean, for me, there might be a strip one day it comes in and grabs my attention, and I might go out and get it. But at the moment, certainly nothing that floats my boat. But again, wise move on your behalf. Go out and get them when it comes towards the end of a season. I mean, I bought one or two for holidays in the past, etc. But I think I've mentioned it on the show before. I bought a lot of retro shirts over the years, and I find that the retro shirts are more up my street. But there's always something for everybody. So yeah, it is interesting. But we'll wait with bated breath to see what the Castoria kit eventually looks like. That's if Castoria coming in, the worst kept secret in football shirt history. But yeah, we'll look forward to seeing what they're like, and hopefully, there'll be some slightly better home tops, because I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy, Holly. I like to see thick black and white stripes. I don't like all of this, half a stripe, or they've got to be right. It's got to be a proper black and white strip. And some of the ones I've seen, I just haven't liked them at all.
I know what you mean, yeah, because when we had like the strip, I think it was like a couple of years ago when Bruce first came, and the strips were like, the stripes on the strips were absolutely massive. I hated that because it was basically just like 4 stripes on the whole shirt, and it doesn't look like a Newcastle shirt. I prefer it when it's the right amount of stripes, like 8 stripes or whatever, because sometimes it doesn't look like a Newcastle shirt, does it?
No, definitely not. Life Goals says, does anyone feel Rafa's tarnished his legacy in the past 2 years? Feels like a mercenary. Can't imagine 50-year-old Benitez going to Dalian or the rivals of his most beloved club. What do you think about that? I personally feel with Rafa, he hasn't tarnished his legacy. He's just took the jobs that were available. But what do you think?
I think that he's close to doing it, because I think when he left Newcastle, his reputation was pretty much like pristine. And then he went to China, which he got a lot of criticism for, because it was a money move or whatever, and people were saying that he could have got a better job in the UK. I didn't really mind it much, because I thought, like, listen, if that's the job that's available, he wants to make a few quid, he wants to go to another country and manage in a different league, then why not go for it? And I wished him all the best. But now if he goes to Everton as well after that, I really feel like now he is starting to tarnish his reputation a little bit, because that, for me, goes against what I think Rafa Benitez is known as, which is a guy that has good morals and good principles and has some degree of loyalty, although there's not much of that in football these days. I'm just praying and hoping that he doesn't end up doing it, because I think it will ruin his reputation, because we all know how much he praises Liverpool all the time and the relationship that he had with them, and to go to Everton kind of would ruin that.
Okay, Anthony Emma says Lee Clark and Graham Jones combo until the takeover is approved, and it will be approved, he says. So a bit of confidence from Anthony there. Would you like to see Lee Clark and Graham Jones combination at the club?
Wait, is he referring to Lee Clark as manager or another coach?
Well, I guess he means Lee Clark as manager, because Lee's got the experience and he's looking for a job.
You know, I'm a big fan of Lee Clark. I really do like him. I love watching him on the show and stuff. But as the manager at the minute, I don't think so, because I think he doesn't have a wide variety of experience, and not in the Premier League. And I think this job is probably one of the hardest to take in the Premier League at the minute. So for me, I'd be wanting someone with a little bit more experience.
Gary Milligan says, Amanda Staveley to show off the new strips. He says, I can wish. Tom says, no one with power at Newcastle United cares about Newcastle United, which is a good point. You're not getting any arguments from me. Darren says, are Stafford St James's Park still on furlough? I believe not. I believe they're back in and, working in whatever degree they are. I think that's all been and gone, I'm afraid. So whatever staff is available will be there at some point. Life goes, what's with all these youth players signing? The academy feels like Brentford rejects with all these cast-offs. Yeah, I mean, we have delved into the transfer market, but nobody knows who any of these players are, Holly. And not that I'm against signing youth, mind. Certainly not. But, Remy Savage, of course. Sean Mavidi, maybe, I don't know. I'm renowned on this show for not being able to get names right, so I might as well start while I mean to go on with this guy. And Cameron Ferguson is also predicted to sign, of course. He's the son, actually, of former old boy at the club, Duncan Ferguson. Talk of him coming as well. But all young kids, is that a positive?
For me, no. I don't get excited when we sign people for the under-23s or the academy, because the academy's pretty dead. I think it's fair to say, like, we haven't, yes, obviously we've produced the long staffs and stuff like that, but relatively over the past 14 year, whatever, however long Mike Ashley's been here, we haven't really produced any youth talent. No one really came through the ranks, and I think we don't do that well in the league. We're at a pretty poor standard, I think it's fair to say. So I'd love to be at a point in the future where I do get excited about young players signing, because there's the idea that they'll be in the first team in a few years. But now I don't think anything will come of them, unfortunately. But I'd love to be proven wrong and them to make it for Newcastle. But I just think the whole setup's wrong at the moment.
John, good evening from QTech. He says, very interesting. Newcastle have extended the accounts period to July the 31st, which isn't normal practice. Is it me, or did they do that last year? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But again, always interesting when you see things like that. Maybe it just means the accountant hasn't got round to doing it. Christopher says, got an eBay bid in for an away 94-96 strip. Don't outbid me. Well, you shouldn't have put it on here, should you? You'll have all kinds going on there now looking for it. People trying to find it. Puma strips have been generally awful. Glad we're leaving them. Shame though, we're not going back to Adidas. Yeah, Adidas was really, really good. Puma, haven't been too keen on. Remember the Asics manager's coat? That was class. Colin was very warm. I remember that. Quite a bit of chat going on about this auction bid that Chris has got going on. Dunnell says, Fun 88 does not represent local identity. Blue Star McEwen's meant something. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, sponsors are a big thing, aren't they, Holly? And of course, things change. I mean, you go back 35, 40 years, everyone was smoking, and cigarette sponsors were, all over the place. Football, Formula One, you name it. But nowadays it moved on. It was beer, breweries, etc., and then it was gambling, which is of course Fun 88. But it almost looks as if that's going to start getting pushed to the side at some point. It's what's publicly acceptable, I guess, with people.
Yeah, it is. I think since the more modern era, Newcastle haven't done very well with sponsors, because I think we haven't really made the most money out of them. Whereas you see some clubs like Man City, Man United, they make a fortune from their sponsors, but we don't bring in that type of money from them. So you'd like to think we could get a better sponsorship deal in the future, make some more money off it. I do like the idea of having a local brand on the shirt, but I don't think it's that realistic anymore. I think most clubs have foreign brands or more bigger brands. I don't think local brands are something that people really put on the shirts anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not even comfortable saying the name, Jeff, so I won't. Life Goals says, also not sure there was a 94, 96 shirt, it was a 93, 95. Again, Chris, now you've taken over the chat with all of this stuff about this shirt, so I think it's probably a good time for us to mention the sponsors. Big shout out, as always, to Spider VPN. For all your internet security, Google Spider VPN. They're at the top of the Google search list, and they can help you protect your passwords and everything else on your computer. Also, a big shout out to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email enquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. And there we see Sir Bobby in his cricket gears. Big thanks to Scott and the guys for that. And big shout out to John. He's always in the chat at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and to John at Jab Signature. And don't forget, if you're a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe by hitting Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free. Plenty of content day in, day out, week in, week out on this channel. Hit the thumbs up to like the video, not the thumbs down like the trolls do, and hit the share button to share to your other social media, and drop into the comments to join like-minded Newcastle fans to chat and ask us a question. And don't forget that the website nufcmatters.com is still up and running and still got plenty of t-shirts, and I did notice John had loaded quite a few new t-shirts and shirts which are available now on the website. So if you're fancying something for these lovely summer nights, then go and get yourself one. The zebra t-shirt is very, very nice indeed. And don't forget, we do have the NUFC Matters 24-hour charity pool night, and that is at Spot White. Steve Hasty gave some information about that and how you can enter at the weekend. We'll give it another shout out this weekend as well. And don't forget, England play tomorrow against Germany. So the matchday bucket will be on, and that is nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. Simply follow that web address and donate whatever you can, and you will go into the raffle to win the watch, which will be announced and drawn at the pool night in August. As always, we have quite a lot going on this week. Tomorrow night, because England played Germany, we have a pre-recorded show with Liam, so we can go and watch the football with his son, which is really nice for him. And it's a big game, and let's hope England can beat Germany and they can dance around the living room together. But yeah, we're going to have a night off, a live show, but we have pre-recorded a special show tomorrow night with Liam. And on Wednesday, it is the Retro Show. As always, the Retro Show this week, we look back at matches between Newcastle United and Bolton Wanderers. And as always, we have all your favourites on there, including the celebrity fans who support Bolton and players that played for both teams. And the lads try to guess exactly who these people are. And we also get them to put a 1 to 11 of former players that played for both teams. Thursday night, Gibbo's back to join me and Supermac. And don't forget, Supermac is making a personal appearance at the Schooner pub tonight. So if anybody wants to pop down to the Schooner in Gateshead, Supermac will be down there. and he is hosting a quiz night with Dino, who used to do number 9 bar. And then back on Friday, we have the Fab Four. So plenty to come this week. And as always, give it a subscription if you haven't done that already. Brian says, until the takeover sorted, we'll be a club in limbo. So the sooner it's sorted, the better. 10% off for the season ticket holders in the club shop for anything that's not on the sale. Everything was on the sale. That always gets up my nose, says Kenny. I can fully understand that, mate. Really, I can. Okay, England, Germany. I mean, I've got to be honest, I haven't got carried away with the Euros at all, Holly. It's not really floated my boat, this tournament. It never usually does. I love the World Cup, but the Euros I struggle to get involved in. England's performances haven't really encouraged me to take it any more seriously. But we have got Germany tomorrow, and of course, as always, this morning, and it will be tomorrow as well, TV was full of Gareth Southgate missing a penalty, Stuart Pearce and Chris Waddle missing a penalty, Gaza just not getting on the end of that ball in 1996. And of course, Jeff Hurst. So Jeff Hurst, still the only person to score a hat-trick in the World Cup final, grabbing his third goal when there were some people on the pitch and they thought it was all over. And England winning the World Cup in 1966. So our history with Germany is aplenty. Even Michael Owen managed to score against Germany. So, it's a big game. It gets everybody talking. But the way that people are watching the Euros at the minute, they seem to think that we've got a chance of potentially sneaking through and getting through the final with the way the results have gone. What's your take?
I'm the same as you. I struggled to get into the Euros. Then I started to get a little bit more exciting stuff, but then the excitement just died out again. I think the performances have been pretty bland. I think Gareth Southgate's squad selection's been questionable at times. We're all lucky we have managed to get enough results, very good results. Obviously, we were top of our group to get through to the next stage. Drew Germany, which is a tough draw. We could have had harder ones, but it's going to be a tough game, a very, very tough game. I'm worried that Gareth Southgate is again going to pick more of his favourite players rather than who would actually do the best in the match. I'd love to see Saka be given a chance, but I don't think that'll happen. And I think if we pick the right squad, I think there's no reason why we can't get a win, but it will be difficult regardless. But my confidence is very low in Gareth Southgate, so I'm not sure if we will manage to actually pull it off. And if I was to predict now, I'll go for a 2-1 to England, but I say that with bated breath, to be honest, because I wouldn't say I'd put money on it or anything like that. I'm not fully confident. What do you think the score will be?
It's difficult, really. I've got to be honest, I am confident about beating Germany, but I'm not confident about anything else. I don't see England progressing past the quarterfinals. I think they could beat Germany. They're a beatable team. We've got a good squad, England, but it's just whether Southgate picks the right team, and that's been the issue for me. But yeah, I fancy us to beat Germany. But people are starting to get carried away with a draw, and we can do this and we can do that, and I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I think there's better teams. I mean, I've made a point of watching Italy because that's who I tipped to win the tournament, and I still can't really see past Italy. They're methodical. They're well organised. They don't concede many goals, and I don't know. There has been some great performances from other teams, but I still can't see past Italy. I think if England get to the final, they'll be very, very lucky. But I do think they'll beat Germany. I think I'll beat them. They'll beat them by the odd goal in 3. I think 2-1 to England, and I think we'll then have to put up with the next few days of it's coming home, and there'll be people will be beeping their horns and driving around the streets tomorrow night as if we've won the trophy. But no, I can't see any further progression after that. I think they'll struggle. But who knows? Jimmy Greaves used to say long before your time and almost before mine, it's a funny old game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think England's quite a lucky side, certainly in the past few years. I don't think we've always deserved to get the results that we have gotten, but I'm not going to complain about that. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I don't think we're going to get to the finals or probably even the semis, unfortunately.
Yeah, Paul Oxley says you're the best podcast woman going, Holly. Your talk sense.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that.
There you go. The clock is ticking down for the Premier League and their crooked cartels, Stu. Yeah, I mean, apparently the cat website went down today, Holly. I mean, are you cat watching, or have you been just oblivious to it like me? Because I just think it's an absolute waste of time watching that. None of us understand it. We can sit and wait until the news comes out. I guess that's my philosophy.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on, to be honest. I see people watching the legal websites, watching planes, all kinds of stuff, but I just switch off to it, to be honest. I was getting involved in all that stuff like a year ago, but I think the amount of time it's went on now, I think we're all just pretty used to the fact that we don't really have a clue what's going on, and we'll find out when it's made public. But until then, just try not to think about it too much, because all it'll do is stress yourself out. You're not like going to find any information, because at the end of the day, if they want it to be private, it will be. You're not going to find that out.
Chris here still ruling the chat with this talk about his top. This is the score draw shirt is so thin, cheap polyester that my nipples weren't completely visible through it. Got some strange looks from people in the pub, says Life Goals. Well, yeah, I've got one of them, and mine weren't like that, mate. It must be a faulty one. Get it sent back. Keith says, typical Mike Ashley move. I remember last year, release of annual results, and Mike Ashley's Fraser's group were delayed as well. Yeah, getting back to what John was saying earlier. Tom says Newcastle should have Greggs as sponsors. I've always felt Greggs would be a great sponsor for us, and they should also do the catering inside the ground. Tom says, Holly, who do you fancy to win the Euros now? He thought Belgium played well last night.
Belgium did play really well. I was quite surprised, actually. Obviously, my initial favourites to win it was France. Then I leaned more towards Italy, who, to be honest, I think now, I think it is going to be Italy, but Belgium will be up there. I think my confidence in England being up there gets less and less, to be honest, despite us actually winning games, because I just think you see some of these sides, and there's so many like dark horses in this competition that I thought would be no threat, there'd be nothing to worry about, but you watch them and they play really, really well. And a lot of teams have really good squad depth as well. I'm quite surprised by a lot of teams, but Belgium were fantastic, but I think Italy will go on to win it.
Okay, Darren says York have announced that 2,000 fan limit with home supporters only for the friendly with Newcastle, and the game's going to be streamed live on YouTube. I think we might see this change though if we're back out of lockdown, for friendlies. I think we might see some of these change. I
have a feeling that there's only going to be home supporters at away games, next season. Even if we do come out of lockdown, I don't know why, I just have that feeling. But I'm still happy with that. If we can get to home games and then hopefully maybe halfway through the season get to away games, just if we can get back at all, I'll be happy. But I can't see them letting mass amounts of fans go to away games, because I think they'll want to trial it first to see how it goes.
Dunhill says it's a tough game tomorrow for England. Grealish has to start and we need the press. Keith says, favourite England versus Germany memories. England 1, Germany 0. Shearer with the winner at Euro 2000. And Germany won England 5, the World Cup qualifying game in 2001. Chris reckons that England will lose 4-3 on penalties. Rachel is back on the top. She went, I've still got the home and away shirts with the grandad collar. They are the best ones by far. Tom says, England versus Germany. Stupid idiots hyping things. I don't know how it'll go. Could genuinely go either way. Either side could embarrass the other. Either could squeak through, which is, it's a tight game, Tom. Definitely a tight game. Last time we beat Germany, I think it was 2001, and we won 5-1, says Darren. Last time we won in a game which meant anything, I guess. I'm with Holly. Not a lot of confidence in Southgate, says Jeff. And Hungary played well against Germany. Hopefully we can play like Hungary tomorrow night, says Tom. It's gone 3-1 to Spain now. That was a couple of minutes ago. And Anton says, you say that, Steve, but won't have a better chance to get to the final after Germany. It's Ukraine or Sweden, and then Denmark or the Czechs for the final. Yeah, but, these teams are still all there for a reason. And, I just feel... we always seem to let the supporters down once we've given everybody a big lift. A bit like Newcastle. It's a bit like Newcastle sometimes watching England. Winners of England-Germany would be favourites to make the semis, up against Sweden or the Ukraine in the quarters. Life Goal says 1-1, then England get 2 in extra time. So lots of people got lots of opinions on that. Many of these top teams have top managers. We, on the other hand... I guess he's talking about he could be talking about Newcastle or England there, couldn't he, Holly?
Yeah, he could be, to be fair.
Yeah, he could be. Keith says, I hate to say it, but I think Germany will win in a long, drawn-out game. Scotland never get to second round, and England never win big games in big tournaments. Some things never change. And Julie says there is only one cat, Steve. Yes, you're right. Friday night's troll of the week. Plane spotters out in force. Got a few bites today with my tweet. Have you bothered watching all the plane spotting stuff? I mean, it's been interesting watching it again, but it became a farce last week when people were saying that the planes were stopping behind each other, and I wonder whether they were meeting like behind the plane, etc. I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm not a plane spotter at all, but I mean, you've got to commend some of these people that spend hours and hours looking at planes, because I couldn't be bothered to do that. And to be honest, I wouldn't even know where to start. But I think it's best not to read too much into it, because these planes, it's not even guaranteed that PIF or Mike Ashley or whoever's on that plane. It could be just like a random business representative for another reason. I don't think it's always necessarily takeover related.
Life Goals is asking what we think of the Spurs situation, whereas it feels similar to when Newcastle took Bruce's 8th choice. Would love them to find their own Steve Bruce. I mean, I'm not really that bothered about Spurs. I've got to be perfectly honest. I'm not. I don't care who they get as manager, but it is a strange situation at Spurs, and it's a strange situation at Everton. And I think the worms turn with a few of these teams who seem to be making that top 8 their own, but are struggling. Tottenham, Arsenal, Everton, and it seems as if some of the less fancy teams have been able to gay crash the party, and certainly in the Europa League. I'm not sure whether that's because a lot of these other teams don't fancy the Europa League, if I'm perfectly honest, because it's such a pain in the backside starting so early with the Europa League. But I don't know, are you that bothered about the Spurs situation?
Not really. I'm not really bothered what kind of any clubs do unless it involves Newcastle. And especially at the moment, I don't really read too much into other clubs, because I think we've got so many problems of our own that we can focus on.
Yeah, Dave, good night, mate. He's just said he has to go, but he'll catch up later on. Belgium versus Italy next round should be an absolute corker. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Belgium again, are a team that I fancied at the start of the tournament, but I've just got a sneaky suspicion that Italy will be the team that will do it. Life Goes is saying, what would your Newcastle Premier League 11 be since you've been watching the club? Well, we do a thing called Dream Team Life Goals, and Holly will be doing one. And I think Holly's will be the most interesting for me, because hers will be from recent times, and I think it will be interesting. But we will be doing one, so I'm not going to ask Holly that question if you don't mind. Tom says, do you think Kane isn't scoring for England because he's focusing on a big money move, Holly?
Yeah, I think that's definitely playing a part in it. I'm very disappointed in Harry Kane, which I think a lot of people will be, because he's always kind of branded as our star man and someone that you'd expect us to be heavily reliant on. And granted, one of the only people that can score goals, but he's definitely, his head hasn't been in this competition whatsoever. I think Harry Kane is a great professional, but this time he just hasn't been, because you'd expect him to be able to focus on England. He clearly hasn't, and his head's caught up elsewhere, which probably is where he's going to be next, because he's not happy at Spurs. But he's certainly not putting himself in the shop window and selling himself well for another club, because if I was watching Harry Kane in the Euros, I'd be pulling out of any deal straight away that I had on the cards.
Yeah, I've got to laugh, Stu, when he's not saying Bruce out, he's saying Southgate out. So thanks for that, mate.
He's not wrong.
Alan says, all games at home advantage to England. I mean, that's made a big difference, hasn't it, Holly? The fact that we've been able to play at Wembley.
Yeah, it has. I know obviously it's worked out that way with like COVID and stuff, because rules changed and stuff, but you could say that it's quite a bit unfair, really, considering we've played like every game at home. Obviously, we deserve to play the last game at home because we were top of the group stage, but yeah, I think that it is a big home advantage, obviously, having more England supporters in and things like that. So if that can help us out in the latter stages and we get further on in the competition, then that'll be great. Hopefully Southgate does pick the best side for once and doesn't just pick his favourite players who actually aren't good enough to play the game.
Yeah, Dunnell says that it sounds like a Danny Boyle film, Plane Spotting, like Train Spotting. Yep, I get you. Darren says, no game has gone to penalties yet. We know who will be first. Oh, God, I hope not. I really, really do hope not. Lee Clark and Spurs a good fit. I don't think Lee Clark is going to get the Spurs job, Jeff. I love him in a bit, but I can't see that happening. If Rafa is not announced by midweek, I'd say he's not taking the job. Well, everyone seems to be pointing to tomorrow, Chris, as D-Day, and that it's been a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I haven't spoken to his agent this week, so I don't know whether that's true or not. So let's wait and see what happens tomorrow and see whether the ticker tape comes along Sky Sports News, I guess. Tom Dixon, Croatia 2, Spain 3. Thank you, everybody, for the update on that scoreline. Seems that's been another humdinger that I've missed. Southgate plays old-fashioned football, doesn't have a plan B, says Norman. And also, I don't think the formation tactics suit Kane, says Jeff. The service hasn't been great to him, says Dunno. And I would agree. I think it's a combination of all of those things. The fact that his mind is clearly set on this move and the upheaval it's going to cause and where he's going to end up. But on top of that, I just think the formation of the team and the way that we've been playing hasn't been aimed at Harry Kane. And these players can't go out of form, so it is interesting. Darren says, if I was Wilson, I would be looking into my family tree to see if I've got Welsh or Scottish grandparents to play for Wales or Scotland. Southgate's never going to pick him. Same goes for Bamford and Maddison. It's interesting because there was a little story out there. I don't know what the credibility of it was, but talk of Wilson is still in Southgate's thoughts. Can you see that? I think there's a bit of a queue ahead of him.
No, I can't see that. And I think as well, he's not exactly young now, so he's probably missed his chance a little bit. I mean, no disrespect to him because he's been brilliant for Newcastle. And I think certainly he could have got a game in this competition if he'd been in the squad, because realistically, he's probably would have done a better job than Harry Kane. But I don't think he's going to get that chance, unfortunately. And I know that was one of his targets, but I think even at the time when he signed for Newcastle, I think if he really wanted to play for England, Newcastle was the wrong choice, because we don't really have a record of our players being picked for England, especially in recent years and under Gareth Southgate. But yeah, I think there's a few more strikers that'll be ahead of Wilson, and I think he'll probably be looking to retire by the time those players have even all been tested in the squad. I don't think he's going to get that chance, unfortunately for him.
Could Harry Kane be playing badly in the hope of driving his transfer price tag down? I don't think so. He's not going to do that, Holly, is he?
No, I don't think so.
Definitely not. Rachel says Harry Kane isn't worth £20 at the minute, let alone 100 million. He's been a huge disappointment in the Euros. I think he's slightly worth more than 20 quid, but I get your point. How much is a ticket to watch England's game? Best it costs a fortune. Not as much as you would expect, Tom. I mean, Darren Curry, one of our pals, is he's been to all of them, and it's not as much money as you would think, Holly, is it, when you go to an England game, depending on where you sit, of course. I mean, if you're up in the gods, you're not going to be, you're not going to have a great view, but you're there. But quite reasonable. I've been to Wembley myself before, and you're talking maybe it's £45, £50, but then obviously if you're closer to the action, it's obviously a lot more.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, if you think about it, it's probably just the cost of an average away day when you add everything up, so it's not too bad. But yeah, if you want front row seats, obviously it'll mount up. But I think I have been to Wembley before when Newcastle played Spurs a few years ago, when they were moving grounds, and it was a pretty good view. Obviously the tickets were cheaper then, but yeah, I can imagine the view wouldn't be as good from the back, but it still seems all right. So yeah, I don't think it's as expensive as you'd imagine.
Tom says, Bruce for Spurs, surely his media pal should be championing him. Yeah, I've seen a few people talking about this on social media, and all these other managers who were in jobs getting linked with jobs, yet Bruce, everybody reckons, is such a great manager, he's not getting linked with any of them.
Yeah, no, everyone's always saying about how much of a great job he's done, but then no one else seems to want him, so it's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it?
It is, yeah. NUFC 3920 says, what happened with Lee Clark? All seemed to be going well the other week when you had him on the show. He just said to me when I spoke to him briefly, he will come on the show in the next week or so, was that it wasn't what it said on the tin, and that the owner's a crackpot. That was those are typical Lee words. But yeah, it obviously will explain more when he comes on. But Clearly, what he was promised wasn't delivered, and Lee wasn't hanging around. Brian H says, Kane is signed for the Shields Gazette to work alongside his lookalike Liam. Yeah, it was a good one, that last week. Kenny says, as long as he plays like that, Shearer's record is safe. Yeah, I think that's what probably most Newcastle fans will be more concerned about, that Shearer's record doesn't go. Donald reckons that Patrick Bamford should have gone. Yeah, we didn't take enough centre forwards. I said this from the start, and I completely agree with you there. Kane will likely go to Man City, but I think he'll be best suited for Liverpool. What do you think about
that? Man City, I don't think he'll go to Man City. I know obviously there's rumours that they have put an offer in for him, but I just don't think it'll end up materialising, because to be honest, I don't think he'd be a good fit for Man City. I think the quality of players that they have is a lot better than Kane. Granted, Aguero's on the older side now and they'll be looking elsewhere, but I think they want to bring in more of an up-and-coming talent rather than a Harry Kane. But you never know. I mean, they've got enough money so they can take the gamble on him. Liverpool, yeah, I think that would be a pretty good match, to be fair. I could see him at Liverpool. It just depends whether they'll spend the cash, because they haven't really spent much in recent years, to be fair. Obviously, they've got a good side, but they haven't been known to splash out on big money players recently.
3-3 in that game tonight now, Spain-Croatia. It's a hell of a comeback by Croatia. So we might see a game go to penalties, extra time in penalties there, which somebody mentioned earlier in the chat. England so far have been too much sideways and backwards passing. Had enough of that with Bruce Ball. The season just gone. Just what I said before, Stu. It's just like watching Newcastle. How about the rumour of Martinez taking the Spurs job? We covered this earlier on. Surely wouldn't walk down his boyhood club. We covered that earlier on, mate. You might just be playing catch-up life goals. Kane got the golden boot at the World Cup, but despite that, he was generally poor, and his goals came from penalties, one deflected off his bum. I don't think he's the world-class player he's hyped up to be. I don't think he's had a particularly good season either. I wouldn't say he's hyped up, Holly, because he's scored some great goals, and his average is 30 plus a season. But yeah, is he hyped for England, do you think?
For England, yeah, I think he is, because I think he gets talked a lot about, like before the games and stuff, and on Sky Sports or whoever's streaming the game. And I think he is labelled as kind of our main man, which kind of discredits the other players, the likes of Raheem Sterling, who has scored all of the goals so far in this competition. So, yeah, like I think he is hyped up a little bit, not so much for Spurs, but he is a good player, but I don't think he's world-class either. I think, yes, he's got a good record. I certainly wouldn't complain him at Newcastle, but I don't think he's like I don't think you could see him playing for the likes of Barcelona, Madrid, these really, really big sides. I don't think he's quite at that level. But I do think there is a bit of overhyping him in terms of England. But I think that will be down to the fact as well that we don't really have many decent strikers. Harry Kane is the best one there.
Yeah, okay. How does Holly cope with the uncertainty which has hung or looms over everything NUFC for a year? How do you cope with the uncertainty, Holly?
Sometimes not very well. Half the time I'm like, oh no, the takeover's off, we're going to be stuck with Bruce, and I start having a bit of a meltdown. But mostly just try to ignore everything, to be honest. Like when it gets too much, I just put my phone away and like go out, because honestly, Twitter does drive you insane sometimes when there's like story after story and just rumours and lies. It does just absolutely drive you around the bend. So I think just stay offline and just try to ignore it and just think in your head, when something official happens, we'll get to know. But until then, don't try to worry about it too much, because you do just get stuck down like a rabbit hole.
Good advice from Holly there. Darren Cowan says, saw a poll on Twitter about Simon Jordan coming on NUFC Matters. Well, who put that up, Darren? Can you make this happen, Steve? I've not seen the poll. I'd be interested to know who did it. Simon Jordan on here? Only if I could cut him off like he's done to me numerous times, or tried to anyway on Talk Sport. But I think it'd be interesting. I've got to be honest, I don't dislike the guy as much as other Newcastle fans do, but he's just getting paid to do a job, and that's to wind people up, and he does a great job of that. Kane is a poor man's Alan Shearer, says Dunno. Kane is a good striker. Good, not excellent. He's not a tenth of the striker Shearer was. I'd agree with you there, Tom. Graham says Kane is not an out-and-out forward, say, like Shearer. He's the best playing position is playing off the main centre forward. Yeah, he's had a lot of support at Tottenham with the likes of Son and others. So yeah, I would agree with that. Holly, how many signings do you think Newcastle will need for the new season? Says Tom.
A minimum of 5, but I think we'll get none, or I think we'll get a loan. But I think we'll probably end up letting go of more players than we actually bring in. But if you wanted to actually improve the side, I'd say a minimum of 5. How many would you say, Steve?
God, depends how many go. It's such early days in the transfer market. It's getting later and later. Anyway, pre-COVID, but now after COVID, I think teams are going to be so cautious about what they do, and we don't tend to see a big merry-go-round of players leaving and arriving until the big signings go through. So once you see Grealish leave Villa and Kane leave Spurs, that frees up money for other teams to spend. And that's when we see the merry-go-round. So, how many players do we need? I would agree. I would say 4 or 5 players minimum to bring in. Gary reckons 12, but I would say 4. I would say 4 or 5. I really, really do. I think we know that we're okay in the goalkeeper department, and at a push, okay at the back four. It's midfield forward line that we need, and full backs. Centre half were fine, but full backs, midfield, and centre forwards. That's where we're struggling. We really need 2 forwards to come in, from my perspective. But interesting question, and it's interesting times. We'll not know really until we know whether this takeover goes through. Donald says, agree, Tom. Big Al was lethal with direct free kicks. Extra time now in the match between Croatia and Spain. Keith says, great show, Stephen Holly. Thank you very much. Donald says, which centre forward would be an ideal backup to Wilson?
I've always said Danny Ings, but even before Wilson came, I always thought that he'd be a great number 2 at the club, and especially now because obviously last year when we had Joe Linton as the main striker, that wasn't a great number 1 choice. But now that we have Wilson, he's an ideal starting striker, and I think Danny Ings would be a perfect person to bring off the bench or as a backup for Wilson. But there's not anyone that I wouldn't take, basically, because I think we're so desperate. I wouldn't really be looking to turn anyone down, to be fair. Who do you think would be a good appointment?
God, I just want to see somebody come in who's going to either, not be injury prone, but just somebody who can get with 10, 15 goals a season. Ideally, you want somebody who's going to get you 20 goals in the Premier League, but it's such a hard league to bring somebody in. Danny Ings, people keep mentioning him. Chris Wood, people mention him, but it really, really just depends on which shop we're shopping in. Are we shopping in Harrods or we're shopping in the pound shop? And that is the big question, isn't it? The takeover is the key to our summer success or our summer disaster unfolding. I wouldn't take Ivan Toney or Armstrong at this moment in time. I still don't think either of them are good enough. Sutty reckons that we should have Shefty Kuchi back as backup for Wilson. He did a good job, mate. And Stu reckons we'll be shopping in pound line. Nigel Hancock, Nick Hancock, he says, is good at scoring at the moment, says Darren. Dear me. Allegedly. Well, no, it's not even allegedly. It was on camera, wasn't it? So we've seen it all now. I did see this rather horrendous video getting sent around, which I passed on to a couple of my mates, with Alan Partridge, if anybody watches Alan Partridge's voiceover, over the top of that security video, which was quite funny. I'm a big fan of Steve Coogan, who plays Alan Partridge. Tom Dixon says, there'll probably be a few free agent strikers out there, but who would come? And ADB says, England will win 3-0. Call me Septic Peg. Okay, great stuff. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Holly, we always say we struggle to come up with stuff, but that hour always flies over.
That is very true, yeah.
It is. Thanks as always, Holly. Great stuff. Thanks for sorting out the running order tonight. And thanks to everybody in the chat for taking part. Holly and I will be back next Monday. Enjoy the game tomorrow. And I hope Liam enjoys his night off with his son. But don't forget, we are back tomorrow night with a special edition of Steve and Liam's show. So tune in 6 o'clock as always. Take care. See you later, Holly. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look